Greetings once again, Apple Stumpers. It's time for another episode in firearms terminology. So today we're going to be looking at a semi-automatic pistol. This one happens to be a Ruger Security 9, but the design is pretty generalized throughout the realm of semi-automatic pistols. And we're going to just check over some of the main parts and components. We're not going to get involved too much in the inner workings. So first of all, let's check and make sure that it is not loaded. So open up the slide, we can look inside there, and there is no ammunition. Remove the magazine, and there's no ammunition in the magazine. Now, for the purposes of our discussion and demonstration, I'm going to reinsert the magazine, but it's going to remain unloaded throughout our discussion. So let's take a look at some of the main components that we can see right here. So, trigger guard, similar to what we saw on double action revolver or revolver terminology. Trigger. This little thing here is a trigger safety, and it prevents the firearm from discharging unless this is depressed all the way in, and then the trigger is depressed all the way that way. So, trigger safety. Here we have magazine release. If I push that with my thumb, the magazine will fall out. Okay, so while we're at it, let's talk about magazine. This is a magazine, it's not a clip. Alright? Clips don't have a spring in them, and clips do not stay inside the firearm while the firearm is being used. Generally speaking, I can think of one exception to that, and that would be the clip that holds ammunition for the M1 Garand, or some people say Garand rifle. That clip does go down inside the firearm, and when it's empty it pops up. But very few firearms that are loaded via a clip retain the clip during operation. Magazines, however, are almost ubiquitously, and that means always, retained within the firearm, and they have to be ejected through a means such as this magazine release button. Okay, so let's talk about parts of the magazine that are visible on the outside. I'm not going to take it apart. So this is called the floor plate, and this comes off. Magazines can be disassembled for cleaning, and these of course are the sides of the magazine. These little holes are called witness holes, and that allows you to see how many rounds of ammunition remain. This thing right here, spring loaded, and that's called a follower. So when this is full of ammunition, this follower is all the way down in here, and through the witness holes you can see brass, or sometimes it was nickel-plated ammunition. Anyway, you can see the ammunition casing through these witness holes. These are called the lips of the magazine, these two things here. And that's about all you need to know from the exterior of a magazine. Okay? Get back to this. So, on this semi-automatic pistol, I'm going to go ahead and close the action. This is the slide. This part goes back and forth. Okay. Slide. And this is the muzzle. Right there. And this is the spring guide. You can see that it's kind of a rod. Some people call this part here dust cover. This is a accessory rail right here. It may be a Picatinny rail or some other design of a rail, but anyway, attachments can go on there like a flashlight or a laser sight. Right here is the front sight. Right here is the rear sight. And you can see how they line up like so. So that's a pretty good sight picture right there. This particular firearm happens to be hammer fired. So I'm going to close the action again. And in here you can see the hammer, and we'll watch it move a little bit. Oops. It was already cocked part way. Alright, well, we'll look at it again in a minute. This is external safety, thumb safety. And once the firearm is cocked, that goes up, prevents it from being fired. So thumb safety goes up, down. This again is the slide release. So if the slide is locked open after the last round, depressing this lever will cause the slide to fly forward. And if there's a loaded magazine in the magazine well, which is this area here, it'll strip off a round and feed it into the chamber, which is in there, the first part of the barrel. This is pretty hard to actuate, and it's not really meant to release the slide by thumb pressure, so like that. Now there's a part of the magazine, this part right here, when the last round of ammunition has been fired, part of the slide release is forced up by that part right there. And when the slide release part is forced up, it locks the slide open like this. So you can see that the last round has been fired. That's a feature of most semi-automatic pistols, but not all. Okay. This right here is the takedown pin, sometimes called a link pin, and I'll tell you why it's called a link pin here in a little while. A fellow by the name of John Moses Browning designed the basic functionality of pistols like this well over 100 years ago. In fact, the famous 1911 pistol that the military used for quite a long time was originally designed in 1905, and then with some modifications was adopted by the Army in 1911. So that's well over 100 years ago, 114 years ago. So this design is not really based on something new and improved. There are a few improvements here over the original Browning design, but not very many. So we're going to stop the action here for just a minute so I can get a tool, and we're going to come back and pull that pin out and show you on the inside of the pistol. Okay, so I'm going to grab, once again we'll check firearm's not loaded, no magazine inside. Going to withdraw the slide just a little bit, take a screwdriver and pop that pin out a little. I'll take it out of the firearm, set it aside, and then I'm just going to allow the slide to come off the frame. So there's another term for you. This is called the frame. The whole thing, except for the trigger. And this area in here is usually called the fire control mechanism. All the things that make the firearm shoot. Here's the ejector right here, this thing right there. That's what causes the empty brass to fly out when it's been fired and the slide comes back. These are called rails, and they correspond to these grooves in there, in the slide. Okay. And there you can see the hammer. I'm not going to pull the trigger and let that hammer fly because it may damage the firearm because it's not in firing condition. But in other words, the slide is not on there and it's not ready to do its normal function. But that you can see the face of the hammer that comes in contact with the firing pin, which is right there. That shiny spot right there is the end of the firing pin. Okay, here we have the recoil spring, and we'll remove that. You can see it's what's called a captive spring. It doesn't come off with a the rod, the spring guide. Some of them do, but in this particular model of pistol they don't. So this is a captive spring and it's a recoil spring. So what I did was I removed it from this little notch right here in the barrel, and then the other end of it went in this kind of round part right here. So now we can take a look at the barrel. So I'm going to rotate it up and out of there. And I'm going to tell you why this is called a recoil operated firearm. This is what John Browning designed, although it works different in the 1911. But see, we have, when the firearm is put together, this pin resides in that groove. And you see how much movement there is in there? So when the round of ammunition is fired, recoil, which is the equal and opposite reaction caused by the bullet speeding down the barrel, pushes the barrel backwards a little bit. And because of this pin, the barrel and the slide are locked together for a fraction of a second. During that fraction of a second, that's long enough for the bullet to get out the end of the barrel and on down towards the target. And that releases a lot of the pressure that's involved in that detonation of the round of ammunition down to a safe level to when the action opens, the shooter's not exposed to high pressure gases or other injurious particles, because the pressure is dropped down to a safe level. Okay, let's pick up where we left off. The battery failed there right in the middle of some of my explanations, so let's see if I can remember what I was going to tell you about. Okay, so inside of the slide, this right here, you can barely see that sticking out, that is the extractor, and that pulls the empty brass out of the chamber once the ammunition has been fired. Inside of the barrel is the chamber. When we looked at revolvers, the revolver we looked at had 5 chambers arranged in a cylinder. Pistols typically only have 1 chamber, and it's integral or part of the barrel. So there's the chamber. This is the feed ramp. This slanted part right here, the bullet cartridge combination slides up that and into the chamber. Again, this is the bore, and this end of the barrel is called the muzzle. Muzzle, like on a dog. Okay. All right. Now, most pistols that follow the Browning basic design nowadays have a firing pin block in them, and it's part of the safety mechanism so that if the pistol is dropped while it's in battery, in other words, it has a round of ammunition in the chamber, the firing pin won't go forward of its own momentum and strike the primer. So that's built into here, and that's usually what that screw there retains, or some other one in this general area will have a firing pin block in it. Okay, let's put it back together. So, barrel goes in there. The spring, the main spring, goes with the end with the hole in it, goes into there, and then you push it forward a little bit and it rests in a little groove that's machined into the barrel. Remember we talked about the slide and the rails. And the rails fit into these grooves right here, so we're going to put the line up the rails with the grooves. And then just like when I took it apart, I'm going to hold it like this and move that back just a little bit so this lines up. And the machined out groove on top of this pin goes up snaps into there. Function check it. And then the magazine will go back inside the grip frame. And once it's in there, the follower will press up on this slide stop or slide release. It serves both functions. And hold the slide back and open for inspection. So that procedure of taking the pistol apart is called field stripping. And that's what we did. We field stripped it so that I could show you the parts inside. So that'll do it for now. This has been a terminology study on some of the main parts of a semi-automatic pistol. And the semi-automatic pistol we used today again was a Ruger Security 9, if that matters. It's a 9mm semi-automatic. Alright, this is Apple Stump saying thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Adios.